So just a few weeks ago, I reviewed a film called The Editor, and The Editor was basically a tribute to Giallo films. After reviewing that film, I kind of got inspired to revisit two really popular Giallo films that I own and haven't really explored as much as I should have because I'm a huge fan of Arrow Video, of course. And as a matter of fact, Arrow Video is now going to be putting The Bird with the Crystal Plumage as well as Cat of Nine Tails on 4K. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be forking out a hefty amount of money for them because I don't own a 4K TV in the first place yet. But this definitely made me want to look at these, you know, give them another shot kind of thing. And what better time to talk about them and review them? Now, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage was filmed in 1969 and released in 1970, and this was which I kept forgetting actually was Dario Argento's first his directorial debut. Basically, it was his first film that he directed, and it's really good. If you're familiar with Giallo films, I mean, Giallo first of all means yellow in Italian, and they're basically murder mysteries. They're based on Giallo books usually, which are murder mysteries technically, and then they're adapted to film. Now, one thing right off the bat, I'm not a Giallo expert, okay? I am a film fan, I am a film aficionado, and Giallo films are a big part of horror culture, horror films. They're a big subgenre of horror, they're a big subgenre of murder mystery, and they're a big part of international cinema, for sure. And you've got your huge ass, Giallo names like Dario Argento, of course. You got Mario Bava. Lucio Fulci dips more into horror, but he kind of is, because he's Italian cinema, he's kind of mentioned when it comes to Giallo films. And you got a slew of others. But yeah, basically, Dario Argento being probably the biggest that there is, this is a really good debut from him. It's so good. It's such a great film. And there's a lot to dissect from it, as there is pretty much with every Giallo film. You can go on forever. Like, I checked out all the special features. I watched the commentary. I watched this film twice, once by itself and once with the commentary. And actually, another thing, I'm pretty sure Giallo films are produced to be watched in English, but I always watch them like I always watch any foreign film in their native language. So I watched this in Italian, subtitled in English. But I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, that they are actually produced to be watched in English. They just don't make sense to me in English because they're all taking place in Italy. And it's not all Italian actors. A lot of the actors are American, and pretty much everybody is speaking in English and then dubbed over in English. But it still makes sense to me to watch them in Italian. What that's it doesn't make sense to me to watch a film produced in Italy in English. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I'm with that with everything. It's not just Giallo films, but yeah. So I watched this in Italian, and then I watched it with the commentary over it. And with that, I watched it in English because I was paying attention to the commentary by a film critic, which did a phenomenal job, knows way more about Giallos than I do. Um, Disclaimer. His name is Troy Howarth, and he is the author of So Deadly, So Perverse, 50 Years of Italian Giallo Films. So if there's anybody who can talk a storm about Giallo films, it's that guy. As well as this other critic named Kat Ellinger. You'll see Kat Ellinger if you watch a lot of Arrow, like Giallo films released by Arrow. You'll recognize Kat Ellinger, sorry, in special features because she's another critic that is basically an expert on Giallo films. So yeah, I really like what those two have to talk about because they go so in depth with with the history and the culture and everything that has to do with the films. Regardless, like I said, this is Dario Argento's first directed film, and basically it starts off with this guy creepily photographing this woman walking down the street who apparently is an 18-year-old student, I believe. And it has this like kind of creepy lullaby playing in the background while this guy is like snapping pictures of this girl. And Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof has a scene where these women are being photographed and this song is playing in the background. Now, when I watched this Giallo for the first time, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, I'm like, I know this song. I know this song. I've heard it in another film. But I couldn't, remember where it was from. But I'm like, I swear I know this. I've heard this. This scene just looks and sounds so familiar. And lo and behold, after, a little bit more research, I'm like, fuck yeah, the Death Proof, Tarantino, when he's photographing friggin' Zoe Bell and the whole slew of girls in the middle of the film, and it's like, la, 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 or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, Tarantino totally, homaged this film in Death Proof, which makes sense because Tarantino is all about friggin' classic, foreign cinema and whatnot. Regardless, that's how the film starts off. And then you're introduced to your main character. His name is Sam Dalmas. And he's hanging out with his friend named Carlo. And you're introduced to Sam. Sam is basically an author who has flown to Italy to write books. He wants a new kind of environment. He's flown in from America. He's a New York resident. And he's kind of wanted to like relocate himself to write some new books. And then as the story progresses, he eventually he comes to this art gallery, like walking down the street. This is nighttime. And he's walking past this art gallery and he witnesses a crime happening in this art gallery. And what happens is there's this man dressed in black, which is a huge Giallo trope. Man dressed in black with black gloves, black hat, yada yada. And he is attacking this woman inside this gallery. And he goes, tries to enter the gallery to stop this from happening. And the killer, whoever, ends up trapping this main character, Sam, in between these two glass doors, you could say. And they're locked, and he's in between these two glass walls, basically, witnessing this crime happening. And this woman is hurt, and he's trying to signal from people from the outside, street to call the cops, but he's in between these two glass walls. Nobody can really hear him. So he's witnessing this woman nearly dying kind of thing. And he's trying to signal for the police to come, but he's having troubles doing so, basically. And that's how your story kind of starts. And then when the police arrive, he's basically taken in as a witness, and he had plans to be flying back to the United States, but a slew of questioning happens. He becomes a suspect at one point. They take away his passport. They basically force him to stay in Italy to be basically questioned on what he's seen, and he barely seen anything because he just like walked in like in the middle of the crime, so he just glimpsed at the killer, and the killer's already dressed in black, so he could have been literally anybody. But he kind of landed in the situation that he really didn't want to land in, and unfortunately kind of has to go with it. So he's basically working with this police officer slash detective named Morosini, and even though he has no real reason to, but because he was there, he kind of has to. And this Italian police force basically is forcing him to, because they took away his passport, and as much as he's trying to fight for it back, he really can't. But they start to investigate this situation, and before this incident happened at this gallery, there was 3 murders that happened prior, which one of them actually was the intro with the dude photographing, creepily this young girl walking down the street. She was one victim amongst two, but he's basically like the police are using him as a witness and trying to get as much information out of this guy as possible. And he starts to work with the force to do whatever he can, basically. So he starts looking at the victims, and he discovers that the first victim basically was a sales girl that worked at this antique shop, and he goes to do some investigating there. There's a plot point involving a painting because of the sales girl. The last thing she did was basically sell this painting of it was a very like macabre kind of like twisted painting. Which it's basically the painting is of this girl being murdered in this like snowy setting. It almost looks like an ice rink, and there's this guy over top of her, dressed in black, of course, basically stabbing her. And it's a very like risque painting. Like it shows her in a skirt, and you can see like up her skirt, and there's blood in the area and stuff like that, suggesting the R word, and YouTube. I don't know what I can say and what I can't. Suggesting that, and suggesting stabbings in places and whatnot. But this painting is basically the last thing that this first victim sold, and again, Sam is involved in this investigation. I don't necessarily know why he gets so in depth with it. He kind of takes it upon himself for some reason. I guess he feels like he doesn't have any other choice, or he just wants to get out of the situation as fast as he can and do what he can possibly do. But regardless, he meets the store owner where this sales girl worked, and they mention this a lot in the special features. Apparently, with Giallo films, and especially Dario Argento specifically, he would portray a lot of homosexual characters very stereotypically, and he would do this in a purpose, because I guess there was a bit of a taboo with the gay scene, 1970, 1969 when this was filmed. It was very different, but it was very, and this is also a European film, so the culture behind the whole scene is different compared to like 2021. You can't, like, you gotta watch it for what it is, and you gotta understand it for what it is. But Dario Argento, one thing he really liked to do is show and display gay characters or trans characters. He did a lot of trans too, or especially cross-dressers. You get a lot of cross-dressing characters or trans characters, especially in Cat o' Nine Tails, which I will be reviewing as well, which came out in 1971, so a year after this one, and was his second directorial film kind of thing. Regardless, way getting off track, this store owner is very stereotypically gay, but it's very obvious that he was portrayed that way, like he was written that way kind of thing. And the motive is kind of up in the air, like the motive from Dario Argento, why he would write him that way, is kind of up for debate and up for discussion, which I find cool, because anything involving cinema that's up for discussion is the reason why I love cinema, because the more up for discussion something is, the more I love it, because the more there is to talk about and discuss, and the more interest there is in it, That's basically how I always view it. And one of the first kills in the film is a fourth victim, actually. And this is done in actually pure Giallo style, and with a lot of deaths. There is one special feature involving Kat Ellinger, which I mentioned. She discusses the beginning of Dario Argento's career compared to general Giallo style of filmmaking, where a lot of Giallo cinema is like extreme sexual, like sexual innuendo, like very perverse, you know, misogynistic especially, you know, tones in them. But Dario Argento, especially in the beginning of his career, didn't really focus on sexuality as much as he did with like sexual violence, you could say. Focusing more on the horrific situations rather than sexualizing the situations, if that makes any sense. At least this is Kat Ellinger's, you know, take on it, and she is obviously a dissector of giallo films, and she, you know, the way she describes it kind of makes sense, especially specifically with this first kill in The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. You see the killer follow this woman into her apartment, and there's a scene where she turns around and the camera follows her to put a cigarette out into this ashtray, and then when the camera pans back to her what she's seeing in her doorway, you see the killer dressed in black. And then she begins to scream, and the next cut, the next shot is not just in her face, but literally like her mouth open, just like the gap of her mouth going, ah! And then it pans like forward so you can see the rest of her face and chest and whatnot as the killer comes in and begins to attack her. And the killer attacks her basically in pure giallo style. He starts to carve her clothing, like you know, taking her clothing off, basically stripping her with a knife, and you know, tearing her underwear off of her body and whatnot, as she's basically petrified in fear. Basically done in pure giallo fashion, if you will. So, like, as a debut, I think this is pretty perfect for a giallo film. Just with everything going on in it. The characters are great too. And then this follows up with Morosini, the police detective, being featured on the news. Once he's featured on the news, your lead, Sam Dalmas, starts to get these weird phone calls, threatening his life, threatening his wife or girlfriend's life, Julia, telling him to basically escape to America and leave all this behind because otherwise his fate is going to be doomed. And he starts to get so much deeper and deeper involved in this case, which he never really asked for in the first place, but it kind of like he landed in it. He does have a choice, I guess, but he feels like he doesn't, and in a lot of ways he also doesn't, because he's so far gone into everything. So it's really up for debate, like whether, like, his options are so limited that you don't really know what you would do in that circumstance, kind of thing, basically. There's a really good chase scene with, you know, a red herring, you could say, or who you think is going to be the killer, down the, you know, the streets of Rome, I think this takes place in. Really cool stuff. The atmosphere is absolutely fantastic when it comes to, you know, a European atmosphere. It looks absolutely great. The gore and the killings are giallo style, like I said. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but the tropes in the film are very, very well constructed, and they do what they're set out to do. And Dario Argento, you know, there's a reason why they call this his masterpiece, even though a lot of people disagree with this being his masterpiece compared to his other projects or some of his other projects. But it's really well done. I like when Sam goes to investigate the friggin' artist. There you go. The artist of the painting. And he discovers this guy named Berto Consalvi, who basically hides out in this shack, which doesn't even have any entrance to it. He uses a ladder. Anytime somebody comes to visit, he drops down a ladder so the person can come up through the window. And Sam basically is interviewing this guy. I'm running out of space like a motherfucker here. Jeez, I have to keep restarting this thing so many times. Anyways, leaving off, Sam is interviewing this guy named Berto Consalvi, who is the artist of this painting, and he lives in this shack, kind of isolated. And he's a very big lover of cats, but not just keeping cats as pets. He also enjoys eating them. So he's eating this big pot of like stew, and he gives some to our lead, Sam Dalmas. And only a few minutes later, does he realize that he has been eating cat meat instead of chicken or whatever the hell he thought it was. But he doesn't get any answers from this Birdo guy, obviously. But as the film goes on, his friend Carlo, who we met at the beginning of the film, comes back and basically has a little bit of a piece of evidence, because what happens is when they were investigating these strange phone calls, they were trying to match the voices, right? They did discover that the voices on the phone were from different people. So there was two suspects that they were originally looking for. But what happened is they noticed this like squeak in the phone call, in the recorded phone call. And through further investigation, Carlo comes to mention that this squeak sounded like this really rare bird that they call Hornitis nivalis, which is basically the bird with the crystal plumage, where the title comes from. And this bird was located in this zoo, really close to the now suspect's home, apartment building kind of thing. So when Sam gets there, he realizes that it's revealed, I should say, that the owner of this art gallery where this woman was attacked at the beginning of the film, her husband, named Alberto Ranieri, right? Yes, Ranieri. Alberto Ranieri is the suspect and the killer who was making all these strange phone calls. So they go try to arrest him. He falls off his balcony window. There's a really great shot of the camera following him down as he's falling, as he hits the ground, which they actually did drop a camera and did break it, but as mentioned in the special features, they were able, like insurance was able to cover all that, which was nice. And then, so Alberto dies, and he's known as the killer. But as the film progresses, Sam is in search of his wife, and he's trying to track her down because she kind of disappeared. And he's looking for her, and then he comes across his friend Carlo, who's murdered. And his friend Carlo was murdered after Alberto fell out his window and died himself. So obviously Alberto is not the killer, because he must not be, because Carlo's dead now, and Alberto's already dead, so he couldn't have murdered Carlo. Turns out Monica, Alberto's wife, the redhead, the woman who was being attacked at the beginning of the film, is the actual killer. And at the beginning of the film, she was the one attacking him, and he was the one trying to get away, because they were involved in some scheme where she's crazy and he loved her for some weird reason, and he was trying to, well, he was kind of convinced to become a killer himself because he loved her so much, and he didn't want her to like be, taken away or put away or whatnot, because she had some crazy ass mental problems, where this painting that I was talking about, this horrific painting, brought this psychosis out of her, which is what they explain at the end of the film. This psychosis that she was hiding for so many years because of some really, really traumatic event that happened to her when she was a child, I believe. She looked at this painting, and this whole psychotic episode resurfaced in her, and then she became this crazy killer who started stalking these young girls and murdering them in order to kind of gain her power back in some sense. And she, lured her husband into this, crazy murderous world where he was, ended up being a part of and dying over. And basically at the end of the film, she's arrested and the case is closed, and Sam Dalmas is able to go back to America, and all is happily ever after for the most part, at least for our main character. So yeah, this is Dario Argento's first giallo, and really impactful giallo, you could say. And I mean, for something that you could argue started giallo, it's pretty amazing. And I love the special features. Like the special features, and especially a release like this, is the best part. Like this comes with a poster. You got your original cover art from the original film, L'uccello dalle piume di cristallo. I'm pronouncing it the best I can. I speak Portuguese, I don't speak Italian, so I can try to imitate the pronunciations, but I'm not perfect. So I'm just going to go with L'uccello delle piume di cristallo. The bird with the crystal plumage. And yeah, the features, man, like you get the commentary is amazing by the Troy Kat Ellinger is obviously great, but yeah, Troy Howarth, the author of that book, 50 Years of Italian Giallo Films, amazing. Like he covers all the actors and actresses and what they've done throughout their whole careers. Like the detail that this guy can go into while listening to this comment is absolutely amazing. And just like you get like commentaries with some of the actors too. Dario Argento, the director, has a commentary. He talks about where he got the idea for this film, how he was nervous to go behind it. He actually talks a lot about working with the lead, Sam Dalmas, played by Tony Musanti, and how much they clashed in the production of the film. How much Tony Musante like challenged Dario Argento with his writing and with his ideas, and which actually I find kind of funny because if I was a director, I would be so egotistical and I'd be like, no, like I wrote this fucking thing. I want it to be this way. So if I had an actor who I'm directing tell me what to do, I'd be like, Jesus, man, like I hired you to act. Like this is my story, man. Like, but apparently they clashed a lot, but they were really happy with the end product, and it was kind of purposeful for, even Dario Argento admitted that like a lot of the ideas Troy Musante had were good and were, productive. So that's good to see. I liked the actress a lot who played Monica. There's an interview with her too. Her name is Eva Renzi, and she was a German actress. And she talked a lot about her role in this film. She also almost had an opportunity to be in a Bond film as a Bond girl, but she did turn that down for many reasons. She was basically against being exploited. She didn't want to be known as an actress who was like, she wanted to be known for her talents, not just to be exploited as like some good looking broad kind of thing. And she was always for that, and therefore she really didn't take off in a big career because she was always so hesitant in her roles and the roles that she took. Now she was in this film that I haven't seen before but sounds interesting, which they talk about in the special features, called Funeral in Berlin, which stars Michael Caine. And this is another film that came out in the 70s. She's in that, and I'm really interested in seeing that because I really liked her performance in this film. But overall, everybody is really good in this film. And I think it's a classic as it deserves to be, and I'm really glad that, Arrow Video puts out shit like this, because otherwise I would have never heard of these films. If it wasn't for Arrow Video putting out, bomb pieces like this, a lot of these films I just would have never heard of. So, it's really good that way. But that's The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. I'm going to be reviewing The Cat o' Nine Tails as well. Like I said, I'm no Giallo expert, but I'm a film lover, so I like to talk about films, and I can talk about films all day. So until next review, subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice, if you like my film reviews. I'll be back for some more real soon. Until then, have a good one. See you next time. Cheers.